Hey everyone, it's about time we gave into the darkness and talked about some Heartless. If you don't know what this is, it's a follow-up to my KH1 video where I looked at every Heartless in the game and compared the original colours to the final mix version, where appropriate. And now I'm going to do the same with the third game in the series, Kingdom Hearts 2. What a franchise. Let's get the usual disclaimers out of the way. This is a video about designs, colours, and sometimes naming. It's not a guide, it's not a big bumper bounty of information, it's more so a series of observations and opinions. As I said last time, if you want a compendium, there's regular Pat's video. I mean, you've probably already seen it, but if not, there it is. Another thing to point out is I'm going to be using transparent, PNG render images of the Heartless to compare them, and not all of these images are amazing quality. Some are going to look a little frizzy. That's just because many of them are photos or photocopied from books like the strategy guide, so Oh, also, I wasn't able to find many concept art images this time around, unfortunately. I'll include them for the few Heartless that I did find. Alright, let's do this. We're starting off with the returning Heartless from KH1, and I'm just going to talk while I show the Heartless images on screen. I don't think I need to explicitly point out what you can see with your own 2 or fewer eyes, so don't expect me to straight up describe these guys, unless there's something specific I want to point out. The shadows, just like in the first game, are pureblood Heartless, and so they don't get changed in any way in the final mix, and quite rightly so. Oh, and here's our first world-specific variant, a Timeless River shadow. Even with this basic AF Heartless, you can see the Timeless River filter turns the shadow grayscale to keep it well within that world border. The Neo shadows in KH2 aren't quite the special threats they posed previously. Now they're pretty much a simple upgrade to the non-Neos. Same design, maybe a little more grown up compared to last time, but yes, still a fan of those blue veins on the body. Makes me miss the Bit Sniper though. There's a Halloween Town variant this time. Of course these are duller, especially the eyes. It's funny that even the purebloods change in certain worlds, since they tend to be less culturally sensitive than the emblems. But it's more about just keeping the aesthetic of the world intact. Unless it's Port Royal, in that case the aesthetic just goes out the window. Speaking of emblems, here's our first, and it's the Humble Soldier. The recolor is the exact same treatment from KH1. I talked about it in the previous video, it's okay, but I prefer purple. Anyway, these conscripts are present in all 3 special worlds, so we have a Timeless River variant, which stays the same regardless of final mix or non-final unmixed, because it's grey. Then the same deal for Space Paranoids, which gives a glowy circuitry design. You can see a circuit board pattern on the knees there. Finally, Halloween Town, which doesn't escape the wrath of the recolor. These are actually super cool. See how the metal parts are rusty, whereas the body looks like a stitched cloth? It even has tears exposing the material beneath. There's a great attention to detail all around. The large bodies are back because how could they not be? It's the same story here too. There's a grayscale Timeless River version, but that's it. A returning classic. I prefer the original colours. Nothing else to say. It's not a Kingdom Hearts game without a pirate world, which means yes, DDD isn't a Kingdom Hearts game. The grounded pirates haven't migrated from Neverland to Port Royal, because I guess they can't fly there, so we're left with the air pirates, which has the same recolor as before. I don't mind it, although it does stray from KH1's largely purple and blue theme, but KH2 Heartless are pretty multicolored, so maybe that doesn't matter now. Piracy, it's a crime. Pirates are kind of out of fashion these days, but you know what's in? Vikings. They're everywhere now, I swear. We can't escape Norse mythology, even in Kingdom Hearts. I'm getting off track. Anyway, KH2 Final Mix added the Cavern of Remembrance, and inside are a bunch of souped up Heartless, which have different names and journal entries, but they're just stronger recolors really, because we needed more color variants, yep. The first of these we see here is the Aerial Viking, which still looks like a pirate, despite the name. Couldn't they have given it a helmet at least? Without horns, of course. But yeah, there it is. It's different colors, yay! Oh, by the way, I think the name's a fuck up. Not the Viking part, but why is it Aerial instead of Air? We already have the Aerial Knocker Heartless in this game, and I think the Japanese name for these is literally translated as Air Viking. So I guess this is a little translation error. Weird. The Fat Bandits are back, because it isn't Agrabah without them, and the color changes are the same. Yeah, no other variants for these, but at least they're still spitting fire. Our final KH1 returning Heartless is the White Knight, or Yellow Knight as far as Final Mix is concerned. Okay, so it's the same recolor, but there's actually something KH2 does better than KH1 here, and yes, savour that because I don't say it very often. But seriously, remember how the final mix version in KH1 lost its ragged look in the Coliseum, making it weirdly clean? Doesn't happen here. This pleases the man. Now it's time to move on to a trio of Heartless who made their 3D debut in this game, but were actually introduced first in Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. In KH2 these are scattered around the place, but mostly present in the underworld. First up is the Creeper Plant. That's a very simple name, as a creeper plant is a literal thing that exists already, you know, in the outside world. Ooh, scary. Yeah, it's a Heartless flower, which isn't intimidating in the slightest, although they can be kinda annoying. Honestly, I don't mind the recolor. I mean, I see what they're doing, making it more obviously plant-like with the green body and pink petals. Actually, at least this isn't just color swap because they've added a gradient too. It's a little overwhelming though, which is why I think this Heartless looks better in Halloween Town, where it takes an appropriately withered appearance. Alright, the Crescendo absolutely loves music, and that's very apparent with this design, which I think is actually quite well crafted. It's a quaver, the musical note, for the head, and then the rest is one of those squeezy horns. It's even wearing headphones, probably one of the cutest Heartless in the game, although it's no Bit Sniper. I prefer the original color scheme here because I think it fits better. A black musical note and a brassy coloured horn makes a lot more sense than random blue and red, although I'd maybe take the blue collar from the final mix and use that instead of the red, that way it matches the blue headphones and really comes together as a... sorry, I'm going too deep into it, aren't I? Alright, this is also called a Loudmouth in Days and Union Cross apparently, though I never played those. And last in the memory trinity is the Tornado Step. This is a, well it's, okay, I'm not sure what this thing is. I mean, it's got Mr. Tickle arms coming out of its hat. It's a very oddball design, which I actually appreciate because this feels quite KH1 in philosophy. It's not entirely obvious what it is. It does use its arms to propeller fly itself around, spinning like a tornado. The step part, I don't know, maybe it likes to be stepped on, don't judge. Anyway, the recolor hurts my eyes, I don't like it. Finally, we're into the brand spanking new KH2 Heartless, and starting with some denizens from the Land of Dragons. The Nightwalker is one of the most interesting Heartless in KH2. This is mostly due to its inspiration, the Jianxi of Chinese myth. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, I searched it up and there are so many different pronunciations and I don't know what's the correct one, but that's what I'll go with. But yes, these are stiff zombies or vampires, essentially corpses that have their arms outstretched and hop around to absorb the life force of victims. Quite clearly this Heartless is referencing these. Even the name, as the Jianxi would generally come out at night, and these are called Nightwalkers. But yeah, I think it's one of the coolest bases for a Heartless in the game. Blissfully, it doesn't have a recolor either. Rapid Thrusters are here to fill the role of ultimate fodder Heartless in KH2. They're most prominent when they're in a swarm, like the ones controlled by Shan Yu, or at the top of Pride Rock when the game isn't trolling you. I always thought these as bees, even though they're not particularly bee-like. I guess that's just the yellow and black. It's more of a rapid propeller than a thruster, but there you are. No recolor for these, I guess the team considered that yellow swarm perfect as it is. Perhaps the Rapid Thrusters got lucky, because now we have what I'd call the trick master of this game. It may not be a boss, but it did receive an unfortunate color change. Look how they massacred my boy. Yeah, so the Assault Rider went from dark blue, black and red scheme, with a little highlight of gold for the weapon, to pink and yellow and orange and even grey there, and purple. This is just, it's not only the colours changing for the worse, but it's again a case of far too many colours, which muddles the overall design into a sickeningly vibrant clashing mess. Probably my least favourite final mix variant in KH2. Oh, anyway, yeah, this is, or was, a cool armoured centaur thing, with a badass polearm for a weapon. Let's move on before I get a headache. Okay, here's an interesting one. The Bolt Tower is named as such because it has a tower design and fires electrical bolts at you. Okay, that's not the interesting part, but rather it's the fact that there's a Land of Dragons exclusive variant. This is the only time that happens, so I just thought it was a neat attention to detail, really. The Bolt Tower is kind of like a Yellow Opera's daddy or something, at least looking at that similar curly on top. And it's another emblem Heartless that escaped the recolor, leaving the Land of Dragons a largely untouched place, apart from, well, you know. KH2 has no shortage of military Heartless, and the next to fill out our ranks is the Lance Soldier. One thing to note is the presence of the spiral eyes I mentioned in the last video. These aren't the real eyes of the Heartless, they're on the soldier itself, but are sometimes used to give the impression of eyes. This helps to give the lance its own personality, which is part of this Heartless's gimmick, a badly behaved weapon in a flustered owner's hands. As far as colours go, it's almost an opposite to the regular soldier because this guy went from mostly gold to silver and purple. I don't mind either version here because the final mix colours work well enough. I do prefer the black lance, but that might be because I'm a little edgy. Here's another Cavern of Remembrance variant, the Lance Warrior, which is closer to the original Lance Soldier than the final mix one. Notably, the lance gets a black outline on the eyes and mouth, which I'd say increases the aggressive look somewhat. The Possessor is a strange one, a wispy blob of a Heartless that, well, possesses objects around Beast Castle. You don't really fight these guys directly, apart from one in the Thresholder boss fight, when the power of Mouse compels it to leave the doors, and you can give it a good smacking. I'll get onto Boss Heartless at the end of this video. It's a pureblood Heartless, so it isn't recolored. The Possessor can take control of statues in Beast Castle to become the Gargoyle Knight and Warrior. Of course, this means these are also pureblood, so there's no changes here. That said, we'll see something later that kind of breaks that rule. The Knight is the more classy of the two and wields a sword, while the Warrior is adorned with spikes and carries a battle axe. They remind me of two factions in an MMO game that should have ended years ago. I think this possession aspect of Beast Castle is one of the coolest ways to include Heartless in KH2, and it makes the world just stand out a little more. Well, Batman grapples around with his bat hook, and Sora grapples with hook bats. This is a very simple design, to be honest, and the recolor is just as simple, going from blue to red. I actually prefer the silver hook on the final mix version. However, one issue I can see is the red and black Heartless emblem. It gets a little bit lost in the red body. Both designs are okay though. The hook bat has a more powerful version named Befuddler, but the only thing confusing me is why it's spelt with 2 F's and 1 D when the word befuddle is the opposite. Well, anyway, it's a funny choice to make a stronger hook bat, but I guess even the cavern needs some fodder enemies. The colours are fairly nice though, a somewhat paranormal look to this one. A serious contender for the most forgettable Heartless here. The Driller Mole shares the Hookbat's gimmick of being a hybrid between two established things. This time we have a mole with a drill on its face, because nature decided they needed to be OP, I guess. I suppose that's a miner's hat too. As far as recolor goes, honestly, I don't care. These guys are either underground or in the middle of a Keyblade pummeling, so it's not like I ever paid much attention to them. I'll favour the original as it looks a little less clashing. Oh, and there's also the Halloween Town variants. Here they are. The Trick Ghost, like many people in our lives, is a two-faced creature. One orientation has it looking kinda derpy, with what I always see as a nightcap curling from atop the head. It seems this is the default, as the Heartless emblem is upright. Upside down, it sports a cheeky grin, and I'll admit it's a pretty cool concept that both orientations look like the correct one, were it not for that emblem. Personally, I prefer the white version, but bright green does fit a ghost theme too. And here's the cavern version, the Magic Phantom. It too sticks to a spooky theme, this time with purple as the predominant colour. Even the tail head thing doesn't change its colours too drastically, which is nice. It looks pretty good, so I'll applaud these apparitions for not ruining their appearance. For some reason, the original rabid dog has one of the cleanest render images of any of these Heartless. Weird. Anyway, yeah, it's a dog that's gone rabid. Look, there's only so much I can do, okay? Well, I'll say those yellow eyes intersected by a spiral is interesting, don't see that too often. It fits fairly well in Olympus, you know, with Cerberus and all. Gotta say, I hate the yellow and purple collar in Final Mix. The dog becoming red is fine, whatever, but yellow and purple are opposite colours, which means they clash very easily, and they sure do here. It's just another pointless downgrade, but not an especially harmless one, fitting for this less than threatening canine. Honestly, I didn't even realise the Minute Bombs had received a recolor until I made this video. I guess the most prominent change is the fuse becoming red. The original bomb was perhaps more classically bomb-like. Bomb. Oh, and there's a Timeless River version too for some old-timey demolitions. The hammer frame looks like it doesn't know how it ended up in a situation, and I kinda sympathise. But at least I don't have to wear a big hammer suit that would definitely cause spinal issues down the line. I don't like the blue on the end of the shoes. That feels unnecessary, but other than that, the original has my vote. The Iron Hammer, it's just another recolor with the addition of a random black line down the body. Colors, they're a thing. This one's a bit drab, to be honest. The aeroplanes can be a little annoying to fight at times, but they're not as bad as those damned air soldiers from KH1. While these are less irritating to fight, I think the design is kinda meh. I mean, it's an old-fashioned pilot guy in a dinky little aeroplane that's not exactly blowing anyone away. At least the recolor is okay. I don't have anything bad to say about it. And yeah, aeroplane is what we use in the UK, as opposed to airplane. So I guess we can claim this Heartless. Colonization time, baby. The hot rods were originally intended for the Cars world, but after realizing that Lightning McQueen was too powerful to put in KH2, the devs migrated these vehicles to the Timeless River instead. They're infamous for being one of the few Heartless you can't just spam X to defeat, so you actually have to think a bit, which scares people. These used to be blue, which I think you only ever saw in the Coliseum, but Final Mix did a Rolling Stones and painted it black. I'm conflicted because this makes them pretty similar to the Timeless River variant, but I also like black, so I don't know, make up your own mind about this one. I like the hood ornament being the Heartless emblem, and the lights looking like eyes when it's upright, that's cool. Then we have the Mad Ride, which is just a garish flame-patterned car belonging either to a kid's Hot Wheels collection or a man suffering his midlife crisis. I'd hope that in 20 years time I'd at least have a little more taste. Port Royal really lives up to the idea of being a pirate world by stealing most of its Heartless from elsewhere. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the pirates themselves, then there's the air pirates, and most of the others are in other worlds too. All I can really attribute to this world is the cannon gun, the Tchaikovsky of the Heartless world. Just like the bat and the dog, this one went from blue to red, which could be good or bad depending on your country and political beliefs. There's a space paranoid green variant too, and this brings us nicely onto the camo cannon, which is also green, but patterned with a camouflage print. What do you mean you can't see it? It's it really has disappeared. It's okay that I lump these two together, right? I mean, neither have variations or recolors, and to be honest, I'd wonder what the team was smoking if they had recolored these two. But yeah, they're pretty cool. Well, one is cool, the other is hot, I guess. I don't know, I'm not into little magma blobs. All I know is I want to put one of these in my drink, and that the other one looks like it has a moustache. Apparently bandits alone weren't good enough for KH2, so instead we have the Lunar Bandits. They're a nice looking addition though, more so the original colours, which keep a little more consistent. You see those Lunar Bandits from Agrabah? They've got curved swords. Curved swords. Lastly of this Arabian assortment is the Fortune Teller, probably the most dangerous Heartless here. These have a rather feminine design, and are full of ice magic, unlike real world Fortune Tellers which are full of shit. It's a pretty elegant design, and I like that they ride around on a crystal ball. Both versions are good in my opinion, and they make me think of those pink and white marshmallows which are just so good. First of a double act of Halloween Heartless is the Toy Soldier. It's a Jack-in-the-Box with a fake Heartless face on the front. Sometimes this Jack is a knife and axe wielding pumpkin maniac, and sometimes it's the Christmassy Toy Soldier from which it gets its name. The Final Mix version swapped all of the colours around, but I consider it a light demotion for this soldier. The more overtly Halloween counterpart is the Graveyard. The pumpkin form is still there, but the box has a different style, and instead of a toy form, we have a tombstone. This one's somewhat intricate, ghosts fly around to damage you, and there's even a little crow on top of the gravestone. I like that detail. I also like the Final Mix recolor, the black, white and yellow theming actually works quite nicely. So I only saw these two pictures of Halloween versions of the Toy Soldier and Graveyard, and only for the original colours. I don't know, they're clearly more rugged. It's just funny that these are the only pictures. Maybe they're too spooky for us. Ah, finally, here's the aerial knockers I mentioned earlier. Stop giggling at the back of the class, these are simply birds with crazy eyes, wings on their heads and boxing glove fists. You know, the usual. One thing I like about these is actually a mechanical point, which I know this video isn't about, but let me indulge just a second. See, their press triangle to win reaction command is only doable as furry Sora, which means normal Sora has no chance at cheesing them, except for something like Reflect or Magnet, but you know. As far as recolor goes, it's fine. Honestly, I'd take either one, although the red gloves stand out a little more, I suppose. Oh god, there's still 30 Heartless to go. Why do I do this to myself? Alright, you can do this, Nova. Here's the aerial champ. Champ as in boxing champ. Champion. It's rather more fancy than the knocker because the Cavern of Remembrance is an exclusive club. Oh fuck, I just broke the first rule of Cavern of Remembrance Fight Club. Here we have Dem Bones, Dem Living Bones. It's a skeletal dinosaur Heartless, which is a cool concept, although I'm surprised they straight up used a dinosaur for a world which could have had any number of non-extinct animal Heartless. Not a complaint, in fact I prefer this more creative approach. Ignore the Shaman on top, we'll get to those. The recolor is okay, but I prefer my bones to look like bones, and the orange and black is straying a bit too far from the idea, I think. In classic Heartless fashion, it has an extra face, this one on the end of its bony tail. Rounding out our Pridelands trio is the Shaman, which resembles a magical masked monkey. A nice detail is how they hold the staff with their tails, I like that. Many primates make good use of their tails, and sometimes I wonder what life would be like if we'd kept ours. But back to the game, this is a pretty wacky design regardless of version, but I think the white mask against red does pop a little bit more. The cavern version of the Shaman is the Necromancer, although there's no dinosaur bones to resurrect here, so if anything these guys are worse at their job. We've had plenty of soldiers, knights and warrior Heartless in this game, and the last of these is the Armoured Knight. This one really does speak for itself. It's a classic style knight with pauldrons and a sword, and even has these thin pointy feet, which seems like a design flaw to me. Then again, these guys are complete fodder, most notably being the bulk of the 1000 Heartless fight. There's a Halloween variant, but otherwise no recolor here. I guess it's a similar situation to the Rapid Thrusters. Accompanying the knights are these surveillance robots, or watchers as they're called in days. This Heartless is becoming more and more relevant as our technology progresses, which is an uncomfortable thought. Maybe Disney will use this design when they take over the world and monitor us to make sure we're all subscribed to Disney+. It sure looks like a robot, and like the knights, it didn't get changed in Final Mix. Hollow Bastion's magic class, the Bookmaster, is one of those few KH2 enemies that actually puts up a bit of a fight. Mainly because they're immune to most magic. It's this little floaty mage guy with a book named the Akashic Record, which Goofy can get. Apparently this is based on some mumbo-jumbo spiritual thing about a record of events and thoughts of all living entities. I don't know, I lost focus after reading a few sentences on Wikipedia. It's quite a niche reference to include, I'll say that much. Anyway, in Final Mix, the book cover becomes purple, and the book reader is now yellow, which would be fine, but ugh, it's that purple-yellow combo again. There's a funky red Space Paranoids version, and also a more powerful counterpart, the Rune Master. This one took a page from my book, it seems, as it's got the most muted colours of the three. The Morning Star is a bit greedy, and that's not a point about its size, no, I mean that it has 2 Heartless emblems instead of 1. Oh, the name is a clear reference to a Morning Star mace, which they resemble. I like that they can retract their arms and replace them with 2, well, these are Morning Stars too, I guess. This Heartless truly lives up to its name. Honestly, I do think it's a clever design and one of the better weapon-based Heartless in the series. I like both colours, and considering how many blue Heartless were changed in Final Mix, at least this puts some blue back into the, the mix. We're inching ever closer to the end of this video, but first up are the Space Paranoid Heartless. Tucked away in their digital world, they managed to avoid any recoloring. First up is the Strafer, which moves side to side around Sora, aka it strafes around him. Like Popeye, it has some thick forearms, and in fact the Japanese name for these is Eraser, which is also fitting for these nerdy computer Heartless. The Strafer's not the only one with a changed name. In Japan, this Heartless is known as Magna Rhoda, which I read is a reference to an enemy in Final Fantasy VI. Those are also motorized, but look a lot more menacing than the Disney game equivalent. That does make sense though. And it's kinda cool that these guys are a double reference, one to a Disney movie, Tron, with the light cycle, and then also a Final Fantasy reference. It's pure Kingdom Hearts. Now over here they're named Magnum Loader, which works well enough I suppose. It's easy to see why we don't have any Final Mix changes, because we have 5 different colours already. The reds are the common enemies you fight on the field, and the others all belong to the light cycle minigame. Ooh, that was quite a lot of trivia for such a simple Heartless, huh? One of the most infamous Heartless in KH2 is the Devastator, which harkens back to the days of KH1 where 3 powerful Heartless together could pose quite a threat. Of course Reflect is always there to save the day, but I respect these tanky dudes a lot. At first I wondered why there's 3 H's surrounding the turret, but it's gotta be H for Heartless, right? Or maybe they're just wrestling fans. I like that they have 2 forms, and it's clever to use the turret for levitation in flight form. Again, it's a different name in Japan, with these translating as Terminator. I suppose here in the West, that name's already too well known. I'm very glad they didn't mess with this classic purple design. Just like the Terminator that we know, these Heartless are back, with a cavern variant known as Reckless, and are predominantly red and yellow. I like these too, and at least they don't replace the original. That's a general point about the cavern versions actually, why they don't exactly need to exist as separate Heartless. You could just buff the original ones and stick them in there. At least they don't overwrite the original colours. It's time to look at KH2's offering of magical musical cone-shaped Heartless. This time around they're a little less classical, both musically and in design. First up is the Silver Rock. We're off to a good start with my favourite genre here. This one is the most similar to its KH1 ancestors, with a simple, small silver design and a few stripes on the hat. The game continues to show good taste in music with the Emerald Blues. Plus we have a little play on words. The Heartless body is a kind of bluey green, turquoise I suppose. There's also a moody blues version for Halloween Town, and some kind of synth blues for Space Paranoids, but I've never heard of that genre. Then there's also a Cavern of Remembrance variant known as the Spring Metal. It's another great genre of music, but I gotta say, I don't see how Spring is a fitting name considering this Heartless is just straight up blue and white. I guess it's a bit of a maverick and defies conventions. Maybe it should be Spring Punk instead. Lastly in this lineup is the much maligned Crimson Jazz. It's the biggest of this family and certainly the most dangerous. The Crimson is definitely accurate, and it's got a fire pattern at the base to represent its abilities. Certainly not a smooth jazz though, this guy's caused a lot of pain for a lot of people. All in all, naming Heartless after rock, blues, metal and jazz, this may be one of the best things KH2 did. Our final normal Heartless enemy is the bulky vendor. Not really an enemy because it's a non-attacking Heartless that gives prizes. The design is overtly a capsule vending machine and not a whole lot more. In Final Mix these changed from red to blue, that's whatever, but what I don't like is the ball prizes changing. They're all on the colder side of the spectrum, and I don't know, I think it looks less appealing. There's a decrepit Halloween Town version on offer too, but I feel like you'd get tetanus if you touch this. Before we move on to bosses, let's not forget about the Final Mix added Mushroom 13. After all, if the Nobodies can have a black coat wearing organisation, then it's only fair the Heartless do too. From what I can tell, these guys are all the same, just different sizes and animations. Except Mushroom number 8. Fuck Mushroom number 8. It's nice to see this type of Heartless return from KH1, definitely in a more KH2 appropriate attire though. The difference between these and their predecessor is a good indicator of how different KH1 and 2 are, not just in design, but in gameplay too. But that's not within the scope of this video. Alright, get hyped everyone, we're almost there. KH2 has a handful of Heartless bosses, and I think they look pretty good on the whole. Getting a boss design right is arguably more important than some random Heartless mook, so the recolours here could make a world of difference. First up is the Thresholder. Like two bouncers at a club, this conjoined duo won't feel like letting Sora and the gang into the dungeon so easily. This is actually one of the weirdest Heartless in the game. Why? Well, it's a door taken over by the Possessor Heartless that we covered earlier, which makes it a pureblood, but it has a Final Mix recolor. A pureblood getting recolored is quite a novel concept. A little bit disturbing to be honest, but to be fair, this Heartless was more emblem-like in appearance anyway. I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but I kinda prefer the Final Mix version. I don't know, it's simpler, slicker maybe. The yellow claws really pop against those darker colours. If I didn't know better, I'd think the original was the recolor. I always thought of the Shadow Stalker as a bigger, badder Dark Ball from KH1, at least in appearance. Its ability to transform different parts of the ballroom is just like the Possessor Heartless. I love that gimmick by the way, using the arena to attack you and the corrupting of an iconic Disney location. I think that's great. The Shadow Stalker is all chained up and hey, maybe it's enjoying it, and I really do like the colours here. Colours that continue with this evolved form, the Dark Thorn. And you can kind of see how elements of the Shadow Stalker have transferred across to this one, for example with the red highlights. The thorns of course represent the Beast Rose. I gotta say, I love both these designs, and I think this is one of the coolest Heartless in the series. It being a pureblood definitely helps with that. The design of Darkthorn is apparently based on the Final Fantasy X version of Ifrit, which yeah, I can definitely see that. The Illuminator helps Barbossa out since the man doesn't exactly have a Kraken at his beck and call. Man, the render images for this guy weren't the best, but here we are. It's a sticky lizard with only two fully formed limbs and a lantern tail. I guess it's an anti-lantern because it absorbs light and makes the room darker. Anyway, yeah, one of the most pointless recolors honestly, given that you barely see this thing. I prefer the original, etc, etc. Everybody loves the Lords, right? Right? Well maybe this pair isn't the most popular Heartless boss in the series, but I think they're alright enough. What we have here is essentially a base game recolor. You've got the blue ice one and the red fire one. Though there are subtleties, the staff for each is different, along with the headpiece and markings on the legs. They break up into the little icy cubes and fiery globes, which is a fun gimmick. My favourite part of their design is how the actual body is encased in the suit around it. The thin black figure inside is actually a little bit creepy, or it would be if we saw outside its shell. So whether you're hot or cold on these Heartless as a boss, I think the design is pretty decent. Remember the parasite cage from KH1? Well, let's take that concept even further with the prison keeper. It's a Halloween town Heartless through and through. Skeletal hands, a stitched face, well, you can see for yourself. I especially like the detail of the cage being like the one at Oogie's lair in the film. And of course lock, shock and barrel affecting the Heartless's actions. That's a cool mechanic. Come to think of it, KH2 is really set on giving these Heartless bosses distinct gimmicks. And most of them are pretty fun, I'd say. Anyway, back to the point. Final Mix gives this boss brighter colours for some reason. Yeah, I don't really like it as much, but it doesn't look bad or anything. It's only a slight change. Okay, it feels a bit weird having Scar on this list, but he does turn into a Heartless. It's actually quite impressive. His heart is so full of darkness, the pure anger and jealousy straight turns him into one, instead of dying after that comedic fall. Not only does he retain his appearance, but he can still use his voice. Ansem would be proud. The Storm Rider. Land of Dragons continues to provide us both cool designs and origins, with this dragon turned Heartless by Xigbar. Hell, if I was Xigbar, I'd ride this thing all the way back to the world that never was. But yeah, as you can tell, I really like this design. From the webbed wing appendage things to the symbols on the underside, it's just incredibly unique and more imaginative than just being a Chinese dragon Heartless. Yeah, it got a recolor, and it's not a bad one. I think the orange tones do look quite nice. I still prefer the original though. The Grim Reaper is another great boss design, just look at this. It's an undead Aztec Heartless, very fitting for the story of the Curse of the Black Pearl. Hell, even the weapon is a ship's anchor. It's literally a blend of all these Pirates of the Caribbean elements, and it still comes out looking really cool. The KH Wiki also mentions similarity to the Aztec Death God, a name I definitely can't pronounce. Now, I can get behind the Final Mix making the face, hands and body white, but I don't really like the rest of it, so my vote still goes to the original. I prefer the original cursed form too, mostly because it's darker in tone. By the way, nice detail with the heart on top there, I see what they're doing. So this is an odd one. The experiment is apparently an artificial Heartless, which is weird, but I guess it kinda makes sense. I mean, its role in the story is a clear parallel to the Nobodies in Organization 13, with it seeking out our hearts to become whole. But of course the Heartless seek hearts too, and it does give Wisdom Form XP. It's funny because I kept thinking the hostile program from Space Paranoids was a Heartless, but it isn't, it's just a program. Then again, the experiment isn't on the Heartless page for Jiminy's journal, it's in with the characters. Geez, I'm not exactly sure, but I'll just include it and assume it is one. Anyway, it's a cool Frankenstein-like creation, but one of the Finkel variety instead. It's made up of all sorts of different Nightmare Before Christmas props. You've got the tube from Oogie's lair and his torture claw apparatus. Yeah, the attention to detail is very nice. While it can be a bit annoying to fight, I love the second phase form, inverting itself like opposite armor and the groin skull becoming the new head. Typical man, huh, thinking with the wrong head. But yeah, it's creepy and well designed, and it didn't get recolored because, well, obviously that wouldn't make any sense. Finally, we reached the end of this ridiculously long list with the Ground Shaker. I don't really like this thing as a boss, but I have to admit it's quite the spectacle, and I applaud them trying to make a humongous boss work. This is like a gigantic version of the Shaman Living Bone combo. The animal part is huge enough to have foliage, even a couple trees growing on top, while the annoying monkey has a creepy breakable mask. It's all very weird and wacky. I do appreciate that a lot. However, I don't much appreciate the recolor because I don't think bright pink is particularly suitable for this boss. Oh well, I guess Final Mix had to give us one last disappointment before we end this. So that's it, around 70 Heartless observed and compared. You may have noticed I didn't have particularly strong feelings about a lot of these, especially the Mob Heartless. I just don't have the attachment to these the same way I do for the KH1 Heartless. And you gotta take into account, the Nobodies kinda steal the show in this game and the Heartless's role is lessened. On the whole, they just look less threatening. There's a lot of cutesy little guys, you know. That doesn't mean the designs are bad though, and some of them really stand out as excellent additions to the roster. There's a few recolors I definitely dislike, but most of them are either okay or just a bit inferior in my books. Do they really need to exist? No, but it's what most of us have grown used to with the remix ports for a good few years now. But hey, if you've got the PC version, you can just get a mod to restore the originals. Hey, so I just wanted to do a recorded video outro for this one. No particular reason, just felt like doing it. And mainly to address a couple of points. The first one being a question that I might get, that I probably have gotten by the time of uploading this, and that's, will you do an unversed BBS comparison video, right? Original versus Final Mix for BBS. Answer is no, very unlikely. And that's because I've only played the final mix. I've never played the original. I don't have any attachment to either, really. I've only played final mix once. So I don't have any attachment to the colours very much. There's little I could say. It would just be me regurgitating a wiki, essentially, and just going, oh look, this inverse looks cool, I guess. You know, it just feels like not a worthy video to make, and maybe something that's better for someone else to make, right? So yeah, that's not going to happen. I think that's very unlikely. And secondly, I just want to say, you know, I know it's a bit of a shame that the renders in this video weren't as good as KH1's. I think generally KH2 renders, we just don't have as many good quality ones. Maybe because there's less medals in Union Cross or something like that. It kind of sucks that a lot of it looks very grainy, but it's just what I had. You know, it's just what I had available. It's all I could do. And I wasn't going to sit and make my own like cutouts from the journal because that would take so long. So hopefully it was good enough to at least compare the colors, and I don't think anyone's really watching this on a full screen, and if you are, I'm sorry about this part of the video, but you know, I think it was good enough to just fit what our needs were for this video. And yeah, that's it for this. I probably won't be doing big videos like this too much. A bit of an investment. I don't have all the time in the world. I'm doing a lot of streaming now. I upload highlights, although I might be changing how I do those soon because it's just a matter of time, and also a matter of I want to upload things I enjoy doing and like, but I also got to think about what's sensible for the channel. So I'm kind of looking at balancing the two, right, and I'm trying to find a good middle ground between that. But that's something for another time, of course. It's nothing to do with this video. So what do you think about KH2 Heartless? Do you prefer the recolors, maybe? Or do you just think the originals are better? Or do you kind of take it on a case-by-case basis like I do? Feel free to comment down below, and thanks for watching.